This is Nina Stoyan-Rosenzweig, and I'm here in Jacksonville at the Gay Contractors with Mr. Marcus Drewa, and it is May 16th, 2014. Mr. Drewa, could you start by telling us something about your background, where and when you were born, what education you had?
I was born in Galveston, Texas, and then raised in East Texas, Tyler, Kilgore, and went to Tyler Junior College, and I worked at Medical Center Hospital there in Tyler, and I started out as a storekeeper in the purchasing department, and I worked there for several years with the CEO. I was very close. I got very close to the CEO, and I spent hours and hours there at the hospital, and because I wanted to know what was going on and what made things tick. And so one night, I could tell something was wrong in the delivery room because he didn't have beepers and pagers in. Mm-hmm. So I went up to the delivery room, and as I walked in, everybody knew me. So the nurse said, "Marcus, connect up the incubator." So I connected up the incubator. So when I turned around, they handed me a little baby. I didn't know at that time it was 1 pound 3 ounces. About 2 years later, I was there in the hospital lobby, and the mother walked up to me and she said, "I want to thank you. The baby's doing great." And then one time the medical staff met, and they were having trouble keeping EKG technician. Mm-hmm. So they taught me how to do EKG. So that was quite an experience. I won't go into any detail there. But I worked for Lawrence Payne, and he and I got very close together. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to put my finger on what the administrator wrote.
This is an administrator back in Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of the other questions you got. It really says a lot of things.
Is this something that the administrator wrote about you?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He and I were friends from then. So I did my residency here in Jacksonville, okay. And I dated his daughter. I was best man in the wedding. Mm-hmm. They got married here. And you know where the across the bridge is? Mm-hmm. There's a boat ramp there. Well, they got married, and I followed them down there. Oh. And helped them get on the boat. Then I jumped on the front of the boat, and they had a boat waiting for them out in the middle of the St. John. Oh. Because they knew I was going to do something crazy.
So you were working in hospitals in Texas. This is in the early 1950s. And then I guess in 55 you came to Jacksonville as an administrative resident? As an
administrative resident. And I slept in the hospital. I was the only person in the hospital at night because it came in June. It didn't open till September. And the process, I had the great-great-grandmaster key, so I could get anywhere I wanted to. And so Lawrence Payne was such a gentleman, and he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and he was just a real Christian. So it just so happened one day, I dated a girl out in Ponte Vedra. One night, I was in a tux, she was in a beautiful gown. The fog was very, very, very heavy. When I drove her out there, her mother met us at the door and said, "Marcus, there's the sofa. It's too bad for you to try to drive back in." So I had to lay there, and I got thinking, how am I going to get back in the hospital without people knowing it. But I had the great-great-grandmaster. So I decided I could go early enough, pull up by the fire escape and go up to the fire escape. And yet, but, so I was, whenever I left Tyler, I went up to Northwestern for my master's, came to Jacksonville. Baptist Hospital here was under the Southern Baptist Convention. And the Southern Baptist Hospital in New Orleans, the executive director of the two hospitals, asked me when I finished my residency to come over and be the assistant administrator. So I was very pleased to go over and be the assistant administrator. And that's where they had a school of nursing, and that's where I got in trouble. Because they had about 170 student nurses. And so I had to pick one, which I did. And we did end up getting married as she was finishing nursing. And then we went on up to Kansas City, Missouri. I was there a couple of years. And then was invited to Baptist Memorial in Jacksonville. I came back there in 60, 61 to straighten out some of the accounting. Then I had an opportunity to go to Knapp Memorial Methodist Hospital in Weslaco, Texas. And it was a brand new hospital. And my wife was pregnant. And so the timing of the opening, I got it timed so that she could be the first patient. So we spent the night in the hospital on January the 1st. And the nurse came in and prepped her. And from there, the nurse went home. It was just my wife and I in the hospital that night. The doctors came in the next morning. She went to the delivery room for the C-section. Then I officially opened the hospital. And when I did that, the newspaper article came out the next day, Real Administrative Planning. So, and that, 50 years later, I was invited back for a ceremony where they had a big stone that they put in the garden, which has got Knapp Memorial Methodist Hospital. Marcus E. drew her first administrator. Frederica Sweeney drew her first patient. Marcus Edwin drew her first baby. And son, Marcus, Malvern Lawrence drew her. So the article came out, Real Administrative Planning, in the newspaper the next day. And so from there, I was invited up to Methodist Evangelical Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri, and was there a couple of years. And then I was invited back to being in some of the Methodist hospitals. I got to know the hierarchy. And so I was invited to come to a Brewster Hospital in Jacksonville. And that was February 1st of 66. In May of 66, they came to Jacksonville. And they said, when they came in May, they said, Mr. Marcus, we're going to close the hospital. And I said, well, let's talk a little while. And you lease the building to me for $1 a year. Because the relationship that I had with Baptist Hospital when I was here in 1955. I got to know some people like Bill Gay and some of the relationships. And so we had got a new board and got everything set up for new medical staff. And we were able to get 11 of the banks and insurance companies went together and gave us a loan. And so we developed it into, from Brewster Hospital was a 2, 4, 6, 8 bed hospital. And we developed that into a all private room facility. Because back in 1966, it was just a different clientele. So we were able to get it open, and when we opened it, we had a real nice group, and patients started coming in. And so during the first 10 years, we admitted over 50,000 patients. And but it was with the help of lots of people and the support of a group that really helped make things possible. And so we got that worked out, and the employees, we set up an employee development fund whenever we started to reopen it. Because my feeling was, I don't care how much you give, it's participating. And I didn't care if it was a quarter or what. But over the period there of the first 10 years, over $100,000 was raised.
From the employees?
And so we gave back to the community in special projects and all. And then we continued doing that. And I think as we ended up to 30 years, we gave them about $1.2 million, I think it's back for different projects. So then as we came along in 1999, we had developed a relationship with Shands then, but the University of Florida and Shands Gainesville came over to talk with me about merging. HCA was in University Hospital. So we were negotiating here, and we were looking in terms of maybe being able to get the residencies in the other hospital. Now, I've got this in board minutes, so it's not Marcus patting himself on the back. So all of a sudden one night, HCA pulled out. And then that way we ended up pulling the hospital together, so that I feel that we've had everybody work together to make it work.
Introduce Mr. Gay, and we can kind of go from there.
Well, two highlights of my involvement with Methodist was Daniel's Construction was here in Jacksonville and has since been bought by Flora. But they did this job understanding that there wasn't any money. And they took pay. We were operating for, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I did the mechanical work. But Daniels didn't get paid for about a year after the
Fully
hospital
paid,
opened. And but there was no interest. They just had confidence in the community and Marcus. Mm-hmm. That was a highlight when Daniels agreed to do that. And the other all the good things Marcus talked about, Methodist did and grew. But the next big thing to me was when Tom Peters came to town.
And when was that?
You remember that date? He came on a Friday afternoon, and Marcus and I met with him and agreed that we would support a organ transplant thing. At the time, nobody in Jacksonville had an organ transplant, including Mayo. And truthfully, the only organ transplant we had or intended to have was kidneys, which Tom did. So we had the first organ transplant hospital in Duval County, before Methodist, before Mayo. Of course, it wasn't long before they followed. I believe Mayo came next, though, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
And I don't believe they did everything either, but what we did was kidneys. And the thing about Tom was he did a job, a patient I remember that Shands turned down in Gainesville. Well, after they started, they didn't do it. And old Tom did it, and it turned out well, fortunately. But I guess he's retired now, isn't he?
Yes, sir.
But he went to Shands after we closed. Those were two big things in addition. The other thing was that when we were going, we had patients that would bring $5, $10 toward their bill. And the damn government stopped us from doing that. They wouldn't let them keep that up.
You mean just to pay whatever they could and whenever they could?
Yeah. But they were dependent, they were truly intending to pay their bill. And we stopped it. They stopped it. We had a great relation, I think, with the black community. Who was a doctor that supported it? So McIntyre?
C.B. McIntyre, Dr.
Yeah.
C.B. McIntyre.
He was a big leader, and then on the board was, he's dead, his widow calls us for help. Was on our board.
Clyde Collins.
Well, he wasn't black, though. We had a black one. But they worked in the community, and the relationship between the black community and Methodist was really a big factor in integration, I think. And it was a pleasant and harmonious relation. But when you turn an all-black hospital into an integrated hospital, you've done something back at that time. Today we have a more lenient attitude than we did. There was a lot more.
But I guess that was something that hadn't really happened before.
No, it had not happened. Had not.
So how did you make it happen? What?
Just the people did it. Marcus, of course.
Well, one of the things, whenever the Board of Mission, United Methodist Women, decided to close it, and then they gave us the leeway of leasing it. Then it closed in September that year. Well, I had to terminate all these people. And if you said you had a day's pay coming, I paid you, or a week's vacation. And then everything was closed October, and we started the renovation and reopened it the next year. Because I knew that whenever we started to open it, that I was going to have to look at everyone in the eye that wanted to come back to work. And so this way, we had a good relationship with the community. Right, Bill?
Yeah, and the ladies, the women, the Methodist women, didn't they give us $30,000 a year or $50,000? $50,000 a year after we took it over. They supported it. So it was a great move, I think, in integration.
And so what about the name change? How did it go from being Brewster to being Methodist?
We did it.
Well, I think that was important, too, because there wasn't any talk about it being a black hospital anymore. It was just a hospital.
You could start anew, in essence.
Right, and it did, you know.
And so this is Mr. W.W. Gay.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you become involved? Were you involved right from the start?
Well, really, my attorney was Blaylock Lewis and Holbrook. But Gordon Blaylock was the one that got me involved, through Marcus, of course.
Okay.
He was president of the board, the new board.
And he was a big factor in bringing the business community together. He talked about the banks and the insurance companies supporting us. I think Gordon also was in the legislature. And I think he was probably biggest single person
Yeah.
in bringing the business community together. We really had support from St. Luke's across the street, a competitor, so to speak, but the hospital supported it.
And Lawrence Payne at Baptist
Big,
was very
big.
supportive.
With Lawrence Payne, you had the support of all the hospitals because he had such a high respect among hospitals. And Gordon brought the business community together. Old Tom Baker was a big supporter, even though he was on St. Luke's board. In fact, he was our patient one time.
Yeah.
And wrote a good letter about how he was treated. Back then, you didn't have enough beds. And he couldn't get into St. Luke's on the board, so he came to Methodist. That's exaggeration in a way. But truthfully, he came to Methodist because St. Luke's was crowded. And he was pleased with the treatment he got and wrote such a letter. Do you have a copy of that?
No,
I had one for a long time.
And so the support then from the other hospitals was due to the fact that there weren't enough beds,
Right.
and the community where Methodist was located really needed a
Right.
hospital. Okay.
and by being an all-private room hospital, that helped during those years because it had to be something there to get the other patients to come in.
A hospital
it
bed then was
attractive.
worth $10,000. The ladies could have sold their beds to somebody if they wanted to buy it, but nobody wanted to buy a black hospital. And Marcus turned it around.
So when they talk about the miracle on 8th Street, is that
It's a miracle.
the
It
fact-
truly is the best name you can give it. And it went from the Brewster's facilities to us on in St. Luke's. When they moved to Southside, Mr. Davis sold it to Marcus.
Mr. Drew, you had a photograph of the new hospital somewhere, which showed also the older hospital as well. I think is that it right there?
Yeah.
Maybe we could just see how.
Brewster was built in the early 20s, right?
Yeah. Well,
So-
1901.
1926.
So that's the original hospital
No.
there?
No, this it's the original as far as we're concerned.
Okay.
But they had two other locations from 1901, and then they were here probably 30 years.
1926, wasn't it?
Yeah. Bruce, yeah.
They built that brick building.
Yeah, they built a brick building, but it was an old structure located in downtown Jacksonville.
It was just a house,
It
wasn't
was
it?
just a house.
Okay. I've seen
That's where they
pictures of the
started,
old
yeah.
with a balcony on the second floor, I think.
And so we were responsible for a walkway going across.
Okay.
And we were told one time we couldn't do it because 8th Street is a state highway. And we was able to get it worked out. And the Davis family
Paid for it.
paid for it. And that's the reason we call it the Davis Walkway.
Okay. And when you, the first renovations, was that to the brick building or was that to create?
Oh no, all
this?
of this is new.
Okay, when was that built?
1978, I believe it was.
Okay. So your first renovations were to the brick?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what opened the hospital.
right.
Okay. So you were able to open the hospital, and then from there, you continued to grow.
Right.
Mr. Gay, what is your background? Where were you born and when?
Well, I was born in West Palm Beach, but we lived in Jacksonville since 1938. And I got in the mechanical business in Gainesville by being a timekeeper with Mr. Beckwith. And from there, I worked with him for 16 years and then went in business for myself 52 years ago. So I actually have been in this business since 1946. Timekeeper to owning my company. And that's all I've done is mechanical work and what I've been able to do for the community as a individual. And this hospital was a big factor in my extracurricular activity. And Marcus was a big reason.
He's been very supportive. In fact, lots of these brochures and papers and all has been supported by the WWA Mechanical Company employees.
Oh, we had an outstanding board, though. We had Herman Tay and Lou Branton was on it, and along with
Hobart Jost.
Yeah, Hobart Jost, Dick Holbrook, my old legislator that's in the pesticide business, Earl Dixon. We just a great board, and they made things happen.
How were you able to convince them to be involved?
Well, I didn't. They when they were asked, they agreed because of the reputation of Methodist, and they could see the results. I really don't think people today can appreciate what it was to turn a black hospital into an integrated hospital at that time, with the attitude that existed. But people supported it.
I guess they trusted, was it mostly Mr.
And they
Drew?
were involved too. See, they got involved in the management of it. We used to have to watch this rascal. We had an active board. It wasn't just a board. I mean,
They really cared.
truly participated in the decisions.
It was a very wonderful board, and the medical staff developed real good. And one of the things that through the years, I never worked the board against the medical staff or vice versa. We worked together. And I've got 6 points. God, my family, the board of directors, the medical staff, the employee, and the community is what made the miracle on 8th Street.
Yeah, hospitals that had separate meetings with the medical staff and the board, we were integrated. Everybody knew what was going on. It was certainly open business.
And one day we was getting ready to have a board meeting, and I stood at the door. It was the executive committee, and I knew who had money and who didn't. So as they walked in, before they walked in, I said, I need to get 25,000 pulled together. And so I got the 25, but I never asked the board for money if I didn't participate. So we got our 25, because there was a couple of the board members that didn't have it to give. I mean, they could. But
The Masons helped that meeting, didn't they? Raymond and Minerva Mason were big.
yeah, but
What did they do that we named for them? Well, just everybody in town support. That's what I say.
we had a great support team.
And so you also said that you had the medical staff and the board were involved and met together, and they were integrated as well as the hospital. Were you the one responsible for making that happen? Was that your decision?
And the board.
And the board. I mean, it was working together because we had to work together to make things click.
Marcus didn't get his wish every time, but generally speaking, his recommendation was accepted by the board, and if it was, the board supported it, not just in words and spirit.
No.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of trust.
Oh, my. It was great. The way a community hospital ought to be run.
And so you mentioned that essentially that was a community hospital from the time you came in 1966 to 1999 when you merged with Shands.
Right.
What led to that merger?
Money.
Well, they came over and talked with us because they wanted to expand. Well, HCA was in over there.
Okay. Now, what's HCA?
Hospital
Corporation of America
Okay.
was running it. And so this is a political thing. They came over and met with Methodists and so we were working together, and then the HCA just pulled out like that one day.
Well, they were actually supporting Shands too, though.
Yeah.
Financially, they were
Shands
guaranteed on the bonds.
So, yeah.
Well, they got in some trouble back then. I don't remember the details, but they got accused of monopoly or something, I forgot. But losing them was losing, we lost our financial backing.
Also, we had the first comprehensive hospital. We had the Gateway Community House. We had the first transplant program. We had the age program. And there were several other programs that was really new in the community.
You mentioned home health.
Yeah, home health. We had home health because that tied together with hospital.
Yeah, hospital was a big factor in the success of Methodist.
When did that program start?
We had a whole section that was nothing but hospice.
Yeah, we had the tower. I think it was about. I'm not real sure about the date, but 78, 80, maybe it's in the early 80s. And
Well, Methodist is really responsible for the hospice law as it's written.
Yeah.
We had a man named
Don Gates.
Don Gates went to Tallahassee and did the work that made it a law for the first time, which said that a hospice had to have an association with a hospital.
And there's a plaque that was given to us by the federal government and signed that we still have it, and of being hospice. And we also have the certificate from the state, license number 0001. So it didn't mark us and bill saying that we was the first comprehensive.
It created a little bit of animosity in the community because there was folks who had hospices.
Right.
The three of us could have one, but it was never
A comfort.
controlled by a charter, so to speak. So when Methodist got the state charter required, while there was 2 or 3 little different hospices that was offended by that because they now had to get involved with the hospital. And they did good, and it certainly wasn't intended to be a competitor. It was intended to protect the consumer in the long run. so that hospices didn't just exist.
They had to know what they were doing.
Right.
Yes.
And there had to be some guidelines, which there hadn't been until Don got the law passed. He's a legislator. In fact, he may be Speaker of the House now. He moved over to Pensacola or West Florida and got in the business of organizing hospices.
What about the home health program? You said that was tied into the hospice. Was that?
I didn't get involved in that. Marcus, you.
Oh, we had, I'll get back to home health in a minute. We had the first conference of our chaplaincy, a certified program for chaplaincy. And we have a chaplaincy endowment fund with the University of Florida now, because it was transferred from Shands to the University of Florida. The Transplant endowment has been transferred to University of Florida. The money.
But how does that relate to home health?
Well,
He's going to get back to the home health.
yeah.
So with the chaplaincy, is that chaplains of different faiths?
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, it's where that they teach the chaplains. And so that it was a very wonderful program. And there is some flyers that yeah. Those are we had two chaplains through the years. And so that our first chaplain, Ron Mudd, wrote this, and then he passed away. But prior to his passing, I had him to recommend somebody, and Dick Shannonhouse was employed. And Dick was one night over at Baptist seeing Ron. And Ron told Dick that you're now the chaplain, and he died the next morning. So these are some, and then let's see what that is there. This was set up, the Healthcare Administration Distinguished Chair at the University of North Florida. So that's another. And you've got that on the board.
Okay.
How many years was Methodist?
From 66 to 99.
33.
And then I was 5 years on the merger with the consultant.
And so you retired in
2003. And home health. During those years, early years, since it was created in 1975, we saw over 6,800 patients. It's in one of the...
Nurses and doctors went to homes, is that the home health part?
Right.
Along with the chaplaincy program, which was non-denominational, which was again to bring, whether you went to church or not, you still could get home health care.
Right. And the relationship that we had with the patient, that when their time expired, that if they really needed to stay, we had a different rate
That's
that
right.
they can move over. And the
I don't know
nurse,
whether they let you do that today.
right, but when the nurses needed to give me a buzz about it, so one day I went, they got a call and I went out, and his wife was not doing well at all. So I said, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. She died a couple of days later, and he sent a $10,000 check in, and the two daughters sent forth either $4,000 or $5,000 apiece. So that, and we had a plaque that we put if when people made certain amount of contributions. So as you got off the elevator, it would.
And did you have plans for attracting the medical staff? How did you?
Well, like Tom Peters, I got a phone call one Friday afternoon. Would you be interested in the transplant program? I said, yeah. I said, when can you come? He said, I can be there Monday. So he came Monday, and so we started the ball rolling. And you had to have the certificate of need. So we worked that out.
So it sounds like you also had a wonderful way of attracting the medical staff who wanted to be a part of the hospital
Yeah.
as well. So, Mr. Gay, I guess the picture that I'm seeing is one that's really where Mr. Drew is inspiring trust in everybody.
Yeah, I'm just one, and the board was the outstanding part about it. They all followed Marcus, but they also monitored Marcus. It was an active board.
Right. And we had a very good relationship with Medicare and Blue Cross. So, knock on wood, I never got in trouble.
Were you very careful of the accounting then?
Yes, I am, right. Right.
I tell you, I do business with hospitals all the time. And I'm amazed at how they can have accounts payable a year old. We never had that, I promise you. Methodist was current with all activities.
And if I knew I was going to be a little 60 or 90 days, and I'm doing business with certain people, I'd call and let him know, and he never charged me interest.
Oh, we didn't pay interest to anybody.
No, but
Who was the accountant that got us started?
Whitlow.
Yeah, we had a couple of good accountants, and they monitored us.
And we had what we call the AB, and it's in this here, but ABC Home Health. We had Diabetes Treatment Center. We had Employee Med. We had the Jacksonville Bone Marrow, the Jacksonville Transplant Center, the lab for transplant and cellular immunology, and of course the hospice, Nielsen Organ Transplant Foundation. They came over one day and wanted us to take it over, so we did. And then we had a pain clinic, a pastoral care, a skilled nursing unit, and a Southern Reference Lab where that we could go out and pick up lab work to be done. And then the St. John's Horizon House was help with the homeless. And then we had a Methodist Women's Health Care Program.
Did you have a residency program? Were you bringing in medical residents?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's important. Yeah, we had a, we had a hospital administration residency program. And we had, over those years, we had 16 fellows that was residents in healthcare administration in Methodist. Now, we didn't have any medical residents.
So for administration or administrative residency, is that a year-long program?
Yeah, year long. And one of the residents is over at St. Augustine at, what's the name of the hospital they built? Flagler Hospital. He did his residency, and he is doing a great job over there. But as we had what we call an employees awards banquet at the Alhambra so that we could recognize the 2, 5, 10-year employees. And what we did as a little gimmick was my PR department would get brand new $2 bills, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100, and they would put them in between the $2 bills. And then when the 2 years came across the Alhambra Theater, I went to Hawaii one year, got a grass skirt, and then so got a little hat that fits up there. She knows what it's like. Shouldn't, but anyway, it had boobs on it. So I stood there on the theater and passing out the $2 bill. And whenever somebody got a 5, 10, 50, or $100 bill, I got a hug. So that we had some real nice awards banquet. We had Christmas parties, and we had fundraiser, and we had Bob Hope, Fred Skelton, and George Byrne in consecutive order.
Wow, that's quite a line. That was what, for one night?
No.
Oh, okay.
For 3 years.
Okay. That's quite a lineup, though.
Yeah, it was. I felt real honored. And, I mean, you know, we're a small facility compared to, but they were willing to come, and we raised money.
Well, the Masons and Fran Kenny were a factor in getting them here.
Yeah.
Raymond Mason.
Yeah, Raymond Mason had a private jet, and Bob Hope called me a couple of days before and said, I'm going to fly into Houston. I don't want to go to Atlanta. I have a private jet to pick me up. So I called Raymond Mason, and so I flew over with the private jet, and I took some programs with me and had him to sign and also served him water.
Did you have anything that you particularly wanted them to talk about?
I think you covered most of it. You talked about hospice, right?
Yeah, hospice. And from 66 to 77, we had admitted our 50,000th patient. It was a 25-year-old boy, and he was admitted February the 9th, 1977. I don't know if I gave you that or not.
No.
And this was the program for the hospice, the first comprehensive hospice. And Bill Gay was chairman of the board and presented this. You like that?
So, Mr. Gay, for how many years were you chairman of the board?
I don't remember, probably 5, maybe more.
I think more than that. because he was also chairman of the foundation board at different times and of the hospital board. And we also had, we managed hospitals out in Baker County, Clay County, and Nassau, and had that set up, Methodist Health System Board. And so we managed,
The money that raised the buildings and so forth was done independently.
So what is it about him that made it all possible?
Well, I would say Lawrence Payne is a big teacher, pusher. He brought Marcus along and recommended him to the board to be the administrator. So I think Lawrence Payne's influence on Marcus is a big reason that Marcus is like he is. Of course, he's a good individual anyway. Had a wonderful wife and a beautiful family. Freddie was a great nurse and promoter of nursing and had a good influence among the nurses in the hospital.
Did she work in the hospital at all? What was
Well, not on a salary, but was involved as an individual, yes. Definitely. The two boys never got involved. The other thing that Methodist had was a bakery and a cafeteria that, well, all the folks from Shands came over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It had the good food?
Oh, boy. And the bakery was something that's talked about all over town. Marcus enjoyed that, and he particularly enjoyed it was really just a department store.
Oh, the gift shop?
Yeah, the gift shop. Yeah, he did that. And that produced revenue for the hospital. What it made. But it did well. And people went there, they didn't ask the price, they just supported the hospital. It wasn't cheap.
The food wasn't?
In fact, that merry-go-round there is out of Methodist gift shop. That's quite a unique development there. I have some other things I bought like that, just because it was Methodist Hospital. I didn't need that.
But you wanted to support the hospital.
Well, people like it. The kids like it. We get it to running every Christmas, and they'll come play with it. I have some other things I can't think of right now that we bought out of the gift shop, which we didn't need. Well, I hope Marcus will get back here. I'll leave him with you, and I've got that luncheon with these other guys.
and this,
Make sure I get that back to Jack.
like this one here, it's got the blue dots on it.
Yes, sir.
It's got dates and all.
Oh, it has a timeline. Nice.
But I'm short on those. The blue dots mean return.
Yeah.
But it starts out 1901 to 1967 when we opened, and about the outpatient surgery facility. The foundation was established in '75. Groundbreaking for Plaza 2 was '78, and on and on. Okay.
One question that I had, maybe again while you're looking, did you want to talk about Freddie at all?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah. Ready? Set, go. All right. I was very fortunate in marrying a student nurse from Southern Baptist Hospital in New Orleans, where I had gone there and was assistant administrator after completing my residency at Baptist in Jacksonville. We got married, and then we ended up going up to a hospital up in Louisville, Kentucky, and in Kansas City, Missouri, a Baptist hospital there. We had our first child there, and it was an 11-pound boy. And then we came back to Jacksonville, and then we went down to Weslaco, Texas, where I was the CEO of the new hospital there. And she had the second child, and she was a very wonderful wife, and we had a great 39 3/4 years together. She died of Lou Gehrig's disease, and all she could do about the last year was move her head and tell me what she wanted, where she wanted me to go, and what I could do and couldn't do. But this was over a 3-year period, 3.5-year period that it started. And it started in our hands and legs and then up. So one day I had to take her to the hospital. And I lived at the beach, so we went to Baptist Hospital there because they said we don't have time to get her to Methodist. So that was about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I got her transferred to Methodist Hospice about 2 or 3 o'clock. And they gave her oxygen and a little shot. And so the nurse came over about 5 o'clock, and you want to turn the oxygen off. And I said, well, let me get my 2 sons by the bed. And so the nurse asked, all 3 of us shook our head. So she passed away at 7. And she was a wonderful mother, grandmother, and I have to give her lots of credit that she and all in the way she supported me in my administrative work at the hospital.
Was she, Mr. Gay said that she was involved with the nursing at the hospital?
Some of the nursing activity, but she didn't work as a nurse. Because it's just like when I was up in Kansas City, and she did work there, but she worked in the nursery. Okay. So that way, she was in the nursery, I was assistant administrator. We didn't eat together. We kept everything separate. So, and I'll tell you another funny. She went into labor early one morning. So we took her to the hospital, and then she ended up having to have a C-section. And so it was about 6 o'clock, 5 or 6 o'clock, and then of course everybody around the hospital, and some of the doctors and a couple of the board members and the president of Women's Auxiliary was all with me in the doctor's lounge. And so whenever the baby was born, because I didn't know what it was going to be, so the doctor walked out into where we were all sitting and said, "The plumbing's on the outside." And of course, with the auxiliary ladies there and the chairman of the board, that was really stunning to me, but it was a real wonderful 39 and a half years. And she came from a very nice family and all. And she was very supportive of what we were doing at the hospital. And, all right.
Okay, thank you.
The thing is that back in 1955, I guess it was, no, maybe 51, he made it, because what it was, I wanted to talk with him. He wasn't in his office, so I was just leaning against the door. So when he came in, I said, I'd like to talk with you if I can. And I said, Mr. Payne, I'd like to go back to college, and I want to be an administrator like you. My dream was about helping people. And I was standing by the administrator's office in Medical Center Hospital in Tyler, Texas, where I'd been working for a year or so. The big day came when I returned from town after lunch, and you were leaning against the wall outside my office. You asked me if you might come in to talk. You told me that you had made a decision to go back to school and to finish your education in preparation to become a hospital administrator. You also said, I want to be an administrator like you.
So
that is, and our relationship from that day clear on up to the time that he died, and his daughter and her husband were like this, and so we've had a relationship for 62 years. She was on the board of the San Marco Academy and the foundation board, and this was probably 10 years ago, 15. And so I heard about it, and so I called her one day. I said, Nancy, I'd like to do something in memory of your mom and dad. And she said, well, Marcus, we've just finished some building and we need some trees by a sidewalk. I said, okay. How much? And I said, okay. So I did that, and they developed I gave them what I wanted on the plaque. So the plaque that's stuck in the ground, the metal, it says, in memory of Lawrence and Idris Payne, in honor of Nancy Willingham, and then her sister under that, given by a friend, Marcus E. Drewer. And so that, because I'd always wanted to do something in honor of her mom and dad. And so that's what was done.
That's very beautiful.
Did you have a note that something else I wanted to comment on?
You wanted to comment, there's something on the merger that you wanted to comment on?
Yeah.
And then also the time capsule.
It was a privilege of me to work with the administrative staff and the board members on the merger, and we worked it out real well. And I was very pleased with the way everything turned out, and I was asked to come back for the capsule, breaking out of the capsule of the old Brewster Hospital. and where I was president from 1966 to 99. And so, and I've been invited to several other Jacksonville functions, and I'm very grateful for that because I've got the relationship there. And that's it.
All right, well, thank you very much.
All right.
I guess this concludes the interview with Mr. Marcus Drewa.